Accomplishments aren't everything. Awards aren't everything. Degrees aren't everything. Even marriage. I think more than anything, you have to be happy and be able to sleep at night with your decisions and have a fulfilled life. And so you could, look like you have it all to everyone else. But if you are not happy with it inside your heart, it doesn't really matter. It's not good for you. And you have to listen to what's happening in your soul and your spirit.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
I am so excited to have as my guest today, Dr. Rasheda Weaver. She is the founder of Weaver's Social Enterprise Directory and a leading expert on social entrepreneurship. She was the first assistant professor for the Hynes Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Iona University in 2017. Dr. Weaver's book, Social Entrepreneurship, A Practical Introduction, is a seminal work in the field of social entrepreneurship. So welcome, Rasheda, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
Going to start like I always do. My first question, Rasheda, is what was money like in your family growing up?
Money in my family growing up, it was very interesting. So I have a really interesting background. My grandparents were Cuban refugees who fled to Jamaica. And my parents were born in Jamaica. So they're both half Cuban and half Jamaican because both my grandmothers are Cuban and both my grandfathers are Jamaican. And then, so I'm the first generation American. So I'm the first person in my family born in the United States. And so when you ask about money and what's family money like, the main reason my mom wanted to come to the United States, she said she wouldn't have kids unless she came here because she knew if she had a daughter, that her daughter would face certain challenges and wouldn't necessarily have ownership of her life. She would have to depend on a man. And so for me, money was coming to America. I was always told that this is the land of opportunity. And I felt like I could do anything. We didn't have much money, but I always knew that I could acquire it here. And so that's been my relationship with money, is being born as an American woman and I'm having my Jamaican and Cuban values, but being here, I could do anything and become anything I wanted. And I honestly feel like I've been able to do that.
What a great message you got from both your parents or specifically your mother?
Both, but especially my mom, because she felt like I had opportunities that she didn't have.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a brother and two sisters, but my sister, one of my sisters grew up in Alabama and my other sister grew up in Jamaica. So she didn't come here until I was 19. So I had no real contact with her. Well, on the phone, but she was just different space.
So she's a lot older than you?
She's 10 years older.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting experience.
But what a great, great message to grow up with, that you have the whole world and choices in front of you. And so how did that translate as you grew up?
It was really interesting because so my mom was telling me this all the time, like, you're born in the land of opportunity, you can do anything. But we didn't have lots of money, right? And so I just knew that either I would have to be in the right place or I'd have to create opportunities or find opportunities or welcome them that would then allow me to live the life I really can envision in my mind. Because I always knew that when I was growing up in the Bronx, I wouldn't say like super poor, but like there was a lot of poverty around me because I feel like my parents did a really good job of just making sure we had everything we needed. But for example, my mom would send me on vacation and she would not go. My parents would never go with us on vacation because they couldn't afford it, but they wanted us to have that experience. So they sacrificed a lot. But for me, I always knew that I could just really be open-minded in terms of, the ways in which money would come to me or I would have to go and get it.
And you said that you knew you would sort of have to be, I'm translating, the catalyst for how you envisioned your life. So could you just share what that vision was? Obviously, you were younger and
It was interesting. When I was 6 years old, I had this epiphany. And I remember it was like almost like an outer body experience. I was sitting, and we have stoops in the Bronx. I grew up in the Bronx. And I was sitting on the stoop, and there was just all these people around me, my friends, my family. And in my head, I was just thinking, like, we don't have to live like this. Like that just came in my head. It's like, people don't actually have to live like that. Like, this is actually a choice. And it was a powerful moment because it was something I never forgot. And the next year, I went to modeling school in Midtown Manhattan, and I was surrounded by rich people, right? So Hotel Pennsylvania, they were poodle shows. That's how rich it was. It was like poodle shows happening. And it was just so fancy. And I remember just that thought again, like, yeah, some people live this way and some people don't. So how do I get to be where those people are? Fast forward, when I was 14 years old, I went to high school a few blocks from Hotel Pennsylvania, went to Norman Thomas Business High School to learn about how to become an entrepreneur so that I can make money and be where the poodles are now.
I love that. Be where the poodles are. How did you hear of that high school? How did you get into that school? How'd you know about it?
Well, I didn't want to stay in the Bronx, so I knew I was going to go somewhere else. And then I sat with my dad, and my middle school gave us a book. I don't know if they gave us a book or if my dad got the book, but we had a book of high schools in New York and in different boroughs. And my dad and I said, okay, I'm only going to school in Manhattan, so let's find one. Yeah. And I actually got into Brooklyn Tech, which was one of the top schools in New York City, but I really wanted to go to a business school. And so I decided, okay, 33rd and Park Avenue. I was familiar with the area from when I went to modeling school. And Park Avenue is actually like very, just personally like inspirational for me. I call it one of my happy places. When I need inspiration, I go to Park Avenue. I go right back to 33rd and Park, where my school was. And I just walk from there to 42nd Street Grand Central. And it's one of the most inspirational walks because what I would tell myself as I did this walk, I would look up and I'd be like, somebody created these buildings. Right? If you think about it, like this is skyscrapers. That's an insane idea. Who thinks of that? To build can you imagine like when the first person thought of building a skyscraper, they must have sounded really crazy. And so I remind myself by walking there that, you might have crazy ideas, but maybe they can come true.
So Rasheda, you've mentioned several times educational achievements, academic achievements. So how did that play out for you? You're in this special high school on 33rd and Park, a magical place. And how did it play out?
It was really interesting. It's really funny, like how your journey takes you to places where you don't really expect to go. Because I did the business high school, and I was really fortunate because I had to go to Columbia University for a summer and learn how to do business acquisitions. I was in a program called Youth About Business, and we literally had to stay on the campus, do the dorms, and had to actually do a business merger and negotiate to the point where we couldn't sleep at night because we were still deliberating between the different businesses. And like it was a real life like merger. And I did that, and I was so excited to do business. But then I also had this social component because I grew up in the Bronx. And with my family history, I always wanted to do something good for other people. And I saw so many people, particularly immigrants in the Bronx, struggling just to make ends meet. And so I wanted to create some kind of business that had a social impact where I could hire the immigrants that I saw growing up, right? Like I could provide a sustainable wage for other people so that they could, just gain the skills that they needed. And they have so many challenges too. Like no one can understand my parents, right? Like if you think that they have strong accents, like you can understand me perfectly. But if somebody meets my parents, they're like, most people can't understand them here. And so that limits job opportunities. And so I wanted to be able to help people that were in similar situations. And so I started studying psychology, the impact of poverty on mental health, and just social interactions in general. I ended up going to college and getting a psychology degree, and then NYU. And then when I went to NYU for graduate school, that is where I learned about social entrepreneurship, where this idea that I had of both wanting to make money. I don't want to be poor, right? I want to maximize my opportunities. I'm born in this amazing country. And then at the same time, I want to do something good. And these are two very different ideas for most people. You want to do something really good for your community, but you also want to make lots of money. You're sounding too fantastical. But then I went to NYU and discovered there's an entire field about this called social entrepreneurship. And when I discovered that, I kind of just ran with the idea. And so that's how my mind works. I'm like, okay, so now that I know that this exists and I'm not crazy, there's other people doing this. I wanted to find as much information as I could. And I couldn't find much information because it didn't exist. There were like lots of solo social entrepreneurs, and there were case studies on them that I could find, but I couldn't find a large scale study that said, if you want to start a social enterprise, these are the different business models that you can do to both make money and do good. So I decided to do that when I got to my PhD program. And so now that's actually the information from that research study that I did in my PhD program is actually found in my new book, Social Entrepreneurship, A Practical Introduction. So I studied for 4 years, 115 social enterprises throughout the United States. I actually created a database of over 1,000, but I studied 115 in depth. And I found out the answers to simple questions. How do they make money? Where do they get their money from? Where do they get their startup financing from? How are they doing good? What are the different ways that they do good? And I found 10 different models, main strategies. And what's their legal structure? And what is the importance of their legal structure? Like, how does this help them or hinder them from being able to be sustainable? And so that has been just an amazing experience. And it's really helped my career academically. I think the question you asked me about was academically. When I graduated from my PhD program, I had 5 universities reach out and invite me to apply to be a professor there because no one had this knowledge. So like I said, there was no information on this. I did the first research study, a large scale study of these organizations in America. And then I started teaching it in college at the University of Vermont, which was amazing. I spent a year there. And the beautiful thing about Vermont is that pretty much the whole state is very socially conscious. And I really love that about it. It's very tranquil. And they do social entrepreneurship really well. If you want to learn about it from an experiential perspective, go to Vermont and literally go around. Yeah, especially Burlington. There's so many.
I was going to say, so you're based in University of Vermont is based in Burlington?
Yes.
That's like somewhere up in the north, somewhere near the North Pole.
It is cold over there. I was there for a year. I don't know if I could have made it too long, but very beautiful place. And then I went to Iona University, which used to be called Iona College. And I went there and helped them launch a $15 million Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. It was a brand new institute. And they said, develop the teaching, the research, and the service foundation. And I did that for 4 years, worked with over 1,000 students. And it was an amazing and beautiful experience because there I was able to literally help students start businesses, whether social or just regular commercial businesses, and just see their lives transformed from that. Because they're making money and they're realizing that, like, they would take my class and at first they would say, like, this sounds like a great idea, or I don't know if I could do this. And then by the end, they're actually making money and they're like, wow, like I'm smart. I could do this. Like, I'm like, you have everything you need. You just needed me to pull it out of you. So that's my job. That's what I consider my job. I pull the greatness out of other people so that they can see it for themselves and like, you had this.
I can see that you must be an amazing professor because you bring so much energy, not only knowledge, of course, but energy and belief, faith into the work you do, and you see
Thank you.
the good in other people. Rasheda, I have a question before I then start asking questions about your actual work, which is, how did you fund your academic growth?
So my PhD or the professor, like the research?
I thought they were linked, but maybe even just starting with graduate school, Yeah,
graduate school. So that was interesting. And I'm so glad you asked me this question because I feel like the answer is really important, especially for women. When I got into my PhD program, I got accepted. I actually didn't get accepted with funding. So I was supposed to pay out of pocket. I'm a little crazy. My mom told me this is the land of opportunity. So I went to the department chair and I told her that I needed funding and that if I didn't get funding, it'd be a big mistake because I'm going to do really great things one day. And you really want me in your program? And it worked. And so it actually worked. I ended up getting $25,000 a year in each year for my whole time in the PhD program. And I ended up getting 2 additional sources of funding, but simply advocating for myself and just saying, I believe in me and let me show you what I can do. and you won't regret it. And they didn't.
And so were these grants from the actual university or outside grants?
One was from outside and one was from a community leadership center at Rutgers University, and another was from just a department. They somehow found the money because they had 8 students and they funded 2. And then I was the third one that they funded because I advocated. And so I believe women, and I, throughout my whole career, just advocating for myself and believing in myself and showing people what I can do and saying, because I know once you see what I can do, you're going to benefit. I know that. I'm a really hard worker. I might be a little bit of a people pleaser, so I'm going to want to please you.
Yeah, that's one of the things that women, works for us, but works against us, the people pleasing. Yeah.
I've learned how to make it work in business, right? Because if you're empathetic in business and you can assess someone's needs, then you can meet their needs, but you have to still have those boundaries and know what your desires are and your needs are too.
Yes.
Yeah. And one of my needs were funding.
Thank you for clarifying that and clarifying that with a very important message to our listeners. And I'm going to attribute it to your mother, but, this sort of sense of self-belief.
Yeah.
Of, knowing your core and that you are worth investing in.
You know what's interesting about that? And I think a lot of people do this with their kids. I feel like she gave me a lot of confidence in myself, but didn't necessarily have it in herself. And maybe that's just because of her upbringing, but it's almost like she gave me what she should have also given herself, and I'm glad she gave it to me. But now that I have my own daughter, I see the same way I do that. I have a lot of confidence, but then there's certain areas where I'm weak in. And now that I have a daughter, she's just 4 years old, but there's certain things I wouldn't allow her to do. And as I don't allow her to do them, I realize, why am I not protecting myself from this too? But I think it's something we do with our kids.
Yes,
yeah.
It's aspirational, right?
Yeah.
But that's the next generation. And we project a lot onto our kids. Rasheda, our listeners are women who are in a life transition and perhaps contemplating starting a business. So can you share with us some practical learnings you have taken away from all the studies you did and continue to be involved in?
Practical learnings. Let's see. And women in transition in business. What I have learned is that, and this is so important, for women, you are more capable than you know, and you give yourself credit for. And I really think that women have to stop and sit down and literally go over their resumes and look at all of their professional accomplishments and literally write them out and remember who you are. Actually, I don't know if it's remembering, I think it's acknowledging who you are. And that's the resume component. But however, there's also a life component, right? Just you as an individual and all that you have overcome, all the positive decisions that you've made, all the mistakes that you've made that you have also overcome. Because a lot of times we'll beat ourselves up for the mistakes that we make, but not realizing that we also overcame them and we learned something from them and they were essential to our growth and well-being, right? And so you wouldn't be where you are today without those mistakes. Those are just learning opportunities for you, disguised with some pain, But I really think that's the number one thing I've learned, both in academia and now transitioning to being a social entrepreneur myself. The number one issue that I have with women is that they just often don't know their worth. They beat themselves up way too much. And I feel like they don't know their worth we don't know our worth in relationships, in business, in life, in general. We are so much more valuable than we give ourselves credit for.
I love that message. And I heard you say something that I've heard echoed from some of the exercise teachers I know, which is we've all lived through our worst days, and to remember that we've all made it through our worst moments. And that's a message that can give us strength. And I'm wondering though, from the work you've done, you said you've identified by going deeply into, I think it was 115 social enterprises. What was it? What are the variables that help people to succeed as a takeaway, as you're on now your social entrepreneurship journey, and perhaps others listening.
Yes. So everyone always talks about startup funding. That's like the number one thing everybody wants. And that's not the number one thing that will help you succeed. What will help you succeed is believing in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. And if you believe in yourself, you will just figure out ways to make things happen, because it's like something is going on in your brain, like, I'm going to succeed. And so every challenge that comes your way, it's like it bounces off of you and you might fall down, but you're going to get back up because you already told yourself that you're going to succeed. And so that's also something I noticed as a professor as well. I just knew certain students were going to be successful because they just had that aura. Like they just like, I'm just going to be successful. You just knew that they were going to go off and do something great. And then there's other people who, going back to the worth piece and the value, they're doing such amazing work for other people. If they just put a little bit of the work that they did for others into themselves, if they just worked, there's people literally working 40, 50, 60 hours for a company. If they just put 20 of those hours for themselves, they would be so, so successful. I was literally talking about it today about one of my coaching clients. She's making like crazy amounts of money per month because she has her own coaching clients. But she quit being an academic, and then just everything just took off for her. And she's not working as many hours as she did as a professor. She's just working less. She focused on her health, yoga, and eating, and really just poured herself into coaching. And it's just taken off because she finally just realized her worth.
Well, what gets in our way of realizing our worth, which I know is a big question? What have you seen?
Society and not thinking everybody's our friend. I think one lesson I've had to learn that was painful is that everyone that's nice to you isn't actually being nice to you, and everyone that's mean to you isn't actually being mean to you. And so I'll give you an example. Well, someone might say something to you like, stop being so nice, but they'll say it in a mean way. But that's actually not bad advice. What they're telling you is not to let people take advantage of you. But it sounds mean, whereas somebody could be nice to you all the time and they're just happy that you're a pushover, and so it's just like, I think we have to really literally sit down and just think about our lives more and think about our emotional well-being. How do you feel when you talk to someone? How do you feel when you leave that person's presence? This has been a huge awakening year for me as I left academia, because for many academics, it's a grueling experience, and there's a lot of emotional, intellectual abuse, unfortunately. And I think that has to do with being a woman of color, also being a first generation American. There's certain things I didn't understand because it's just a whole different culture. And, having stepped away from that world and really prioritize going to therapy, doing my yoga, healing, reading self-help books, I've learned so much more about just how to take care of my emotional well-being. And now I can pour that into my own clients, but I can see it. I can spot the signs. Even if they don't tell me what they're going through, I can spot the signs of challenges that they're going through. And then they're like, you're so perceptive. And I'm like, I've been there and I read about it. But that's the beauty. And I think that's also going back to the beauty of women, right? Wisdom. We go through so much, and I feel like we hold on to it and we don't share because we're ashamed. We're ashamed to tell other people what we've gone through. And really, I feel like a lot of the experiences that we're going through are meant to just help us help other people.
So how did you make the decision to leave academia? What led up to it?
Oh, yeah. I feel like a lot led up to it. It was hard. It was a really, really hard decision. And I think the two things I miss are my students, because they just have such good energy and they're young and they're just fearless. And I love a college campus. But it almost felt like fate in a way, because my book was about to come out. I was having a lot of challenges at work. I just felt like I was teaching 4 classes. It's hard enough to teach one. And I was working there for 4 years and I was the only faculty member. Whereas in most departments, there's about 10, right? At least 6. And so I was doing way too much work. And then on top of it, my book coming out, I started getting a lot of speaking engagements. I'm a mom to 2 young children, and I really wanted to, I was married and then I was going through a divorce. And it just all literally came to a head. And I was like, something has to give. And also, this is not making me happy. And so I literally took a leap of faith. It was like a specific incident. And then I said, you know what? I don't have to deal with this. I quit. Going back to knowing your worth, I had a friend tell me, she said, if you get paid that much to do speaking engagements, then why are you an academic? She's like, why are you being a professor and going through all the stress that you keep telling me about? And I said, well, because of tenure. And then she said, well, if you are under so much stress now, you have tenure, you have this job for life. What do you think will happen in 5 years after being under this much stress? It's just going to compound. And she said, when you can literally just speak, get paid enough to pay your bills and live a much easier life. And I was like, that's a good point.
I mean, as you said, Rasheda, there's definitely trade-offs. You enjoy teaching.
Absolutely.
And there's a vibrancy available on a university campus. And it's important not to take years off your life with stress. And I know there's a lot of politics on university campuses. I don't know if that's specifically what you were dealing with, but,
Politics and overwork. It's just, I think it's just not hiring more faculty to help. And then when you do, they leave because of all the same reasons I left. And so, I feel like it was a beautiful experience, and I may go back to academia in the future, but I don't think as a professor, maybe as a director, because I have just so many ideas and projects, and I'm really in love with what I'm doing right now. So I know I want to focus on this right now because I'm happy. So, I think that's actually the most important thing is like, I'm really happy, I'm loving it, and I'm growing. It's really exciting.
Wow. Can you please share with us a little bit of what is it that you're doing right now? Heard a bit about speaking.
Yes. And so I wrote Social Entrepreneurship, a practical introduction. It launched in December 2022. And about 3 months after that, I received an email from the Biden administration saying, well, we have a copy of your book. Please come to DC and Baltimore and join this organization. They have put together a program called the ADSENT, African Descent Social Entrepreneurship Network. And it's 100 people, social entrepreneurs of African descent from 25 different countries. And we're working together for 2 years. And we get to go to Europe and Africa and help each other work on different social enterprise projects. So possibly just developing new social enterprises and also just advocating for policy for social entrepreneurship globally. And so that has been amazing and unexpected. Lots of speaking engagements have also come up. So that's one of my first passions, right? That's like being in the classroom, it's just speaking, and more book opportunities, podcast opportunities. So it's a very beautiful time. I've done my Ready, Set, Launch Social Enterprise Bootcamp, which is basically my book and the training to my book. It's a 5-step guide to developing a social enterprise. I just launched that I launched it online first. And that was amazing. And then I did an installment in Italy in July. It's amazing. So I feel like the sky's the limit and I can do anything right now. And so I'm open, I think. And that's a beautiful place. It's just like I'm open to what comes or what I can creatively think of.
Rasheda, you mentioned a coaching client. Or you're doing coaching, and what kind of coaching? What kind of client?
Oh, I'm doing coaching. That is the fastest growing part of my business is coaching, which I'm shocked about because I almost didn't do it. But then after I did the boot camp, the people in the boot camp, the participants wanted me to do coaching because they said, the boot camp is amazing. You train us to run a business. We are making money, but racism, sexism, imposter syndrome, being a first generation American, being the first in my family to go to college, like all these challenges are flooding their minds, and I help them overcome them. And also a common issue also among entrepreneurs, which I saw with my students, but I'm really seeing with my coaching clients, is just elevating. The challenges you get as you become an entrepreneur. Most people are not like you, right? Most people work for someone else. And your friends start to fall off. This can have issues in your relationships. And I help them overcome those issues.
Interesting. So you work one-on-one with social entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And help them. Can you give us an example of a project, either that, you've worked on or someone else has worked on?
Oh, there's so many. Okay. I have this one client, which I think this is so fascinating, just to broaden your mind about what social entrepreneurship could be. So one of my clients runs a school called M Schools. It's a school for immigrants on helping immigrants acclimate to the life in the United States. So helping them apply for citizenship, helping them learn how to speak English, helping them learn etiquette, helping them learn just literally social, common social norms. And she created a whole school for that. And now it's in Jersey, Philadelphia, and I believe one is in Texas. So that's one example of a social enterprise. I'll give you another example.
And that's a for-profit enterprise. Sorry to interrupt. So
that one's nonprofit, but I do have a few for-profits working for me as well. The majority of people that work for me are for-profit.
That's what I would have thought.
Yeah. One is a physical therapist, which is really cool because I'm learning a lot as well. But she's a physical therapist and she works with women on their sex life and postpartum, care, vaginal care and all that. And so that's been exciting as well, because I think that's something we don't often, think about in terms of social entrepreneurship, but it's a social thing and women's health matters.
Yes. Like I've been hearing more and more conversations about menopause and how it hasn't been addressed. And that's certainly a social cause. Rasheda, as we get, closer to the end of our conversation, I always like to ask how your definition of success. It sounds like when you were younger, success was, having financial means. I'm sure that hasn't gone away entirely, but how has your definition of success evolved?
Oh, it's evolved so much. Before I was 30 years old, I accomplished a great deal. Just really had so much success. And what it taught me is that money isn't everything. Accomplishments aren't everything. Awards aren't everything. Degrees aren't everything. Even marriage. I think more than anything, you have to be happy and be able to sleep at night with your decisions and have a fulfilled life. And so you could, look like you have it all to everyone else. But if you are not happy with it inside your heart, it doesn't really matter. It's not good for you. And you have to listen to what's happening in your soul and your spirit. And I had to get rid of a lot of things in my life to really realize what mattered most in life. I had to acquire them first and then say, oh, actually, this isn't what I wanted, or maybe it is, but it's not with the right people, and it's hard. It's such a hard decision. But for me, success right now, freedom, flexibility, a good home, family is everything to me. Love, family, a healthy relationship, romantic relationship, genuinely happy and satisfied in all areas of my life. I feel like that's success, not necessarily having an abundance of things, but just being happy with what I have.
And you say it, you started it with just being happy with what you have. Well, I think that's the hardest thing, right? We look at our culture, certainly the capitalist culture in the US, and, what is enough is a big, big question and not particularly easy to answer. So I love what you said. And I wouldn't put a just in front of it. Being happy with what you have is a great goal.
Yes.
And Rasheda, I'm curious, what role, if any, has faith played in your life?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked me this question. Before, my faith simply came from within. Like, I believe both my parents did a really good job of giving me confidence.
I would second that.
I remember my mom sitting me down one day and saying that it doesn't matter what anyone says about you. Like, you have to like yourself, and you have to, if you feel something is good, then it's good. You don't look for validation out there. And my mom really sat there, and it stuck with me because she said, some people times they're just jealous and they say mean things about you, and you can't let that affect you because you have to know who you are, and she really taught me that. And as life went on, I took that with me. And then I remember just going through life challenges. I had so much faith in myself, but then I think I had lost faith in outside people after you go through, betrayals and hardships and toxic work environments and all that. And that's when I really, really started to lean on God, because to be honest with you, I feel like there were certain challenges I went through in my life, and I give God all the credit. I give God all the credit for it, because I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to overcome this. And I would just take one step at a time. But I really relied on God for my faith and praying. And thankfully picking up meditation earlier this year, but also just knowing that there's like something out there guiding me, because I felt like even though I was going through immense challenges, it just seemed like things kept working out for me. And so I just had to attribute that to a higher power, because it didn't make sense.
And it sounds like that really gives you comfort, having a sense that God is out there for you. Is there anything else you'd like to share that you think it's important for us to hear?
Yes. My favorite quote: "The most powerful weapon on earth is a human soul on fire." So I always say, no matter what happens to you in life, you blaze past them. You set your soul on fire, you blaze past any of the challenges, and you continue to shine and burn. Like, let your flame shine.
Love that quote. And I'm sitting here. I know most of you are listening to this on a podcast, but Rasheda's face is shining. You clearly get so much energy from the work that you're doing, and then you put that energy out in the world, and it lights others on fire for the work that they are doing. I know you mentioned your book. Are there any other resources? You said, are you still running the boot camp for?
Yes. I'm so glad you asked that. So in January, we have a 3-day boot camp coming up. It's in Jersey. It's in Montclair, New Jersey. So a very beautiful town.
And very commutable from Manhattan.
Yes. And we'll be visiting 2 social enterprises, and we'll be working on the goals for the year, outlining your goals and creating a 90-day action plan to make sure you're in the position to achieve them.
So how do we find out about that boot camp? Is there a link on your website?
Yes, socialenterprisedirectory.com. And I'm also always open to coaching, taking coaching clients. I have a book, and the boot camp is an experience unlike any other. There's actually no program in the world like it. And I know that because I've done one of the largest studies in the world on social entrepreneurship, and you will love it. It's a great community of entrepreneurs, and 5-step process to really designing a social enterprise that's sustainable and also that meets your dreams, right? Because it's like, even like I mentioned, doing the boot camp in Italy earlier this year, that was one of my dreams. And so I really teach others I want you to live the life of your dreams. I want you to be personally, socially, and financially successful.
What a lovely blessing.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being my guest, Rasheda. You have a very important message to get out in the world. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Rasheda Weaver, founder and CEO of Weaver's Social Enterprise Directory. And some of my takeaways are, you might have a crazy idea, but maybe it can come true. Rasheda remembers being 6 years old and sitting on her stoop in the Bronx and having what felt like an epiphany, that she and her family did not have to live the way they were living. That it was actually a choice to accept the status quo. When she was 14 years old, she made a conscious decision not to attend high school locally. Instead, she enrolled in a business high school located in the Murray Hill section of Manhattan so that she could learn to be an entrepreneur and how to earn money. It was on her walk to school along Park Avenue, which she refers to as her happy place, that she would look up at all the skyscrapers and think that it must have seemed insane to build a skyscraper when someone first thought of it. What a crazy idea! Yet crazy ideas can come true. Which leads her to another takeaway. If you can't find what you're looking for, create it yourself. Rasheda grew up in the Bronx, surrounded by immigrants who were struggling to make ends meet. She became interested in creating a business that had a social impact, where she could hire immigrants and provide a sustainable wage for people and help them gain the skills that they needed. She discovered that there was a field called social entrepreneurship, but when she went to learn more about it, she discovered that there was very little information available. She decided, during her PhD program, to do a large-scale case study of social enterprises throughout the United States. She created a database of over 1,000 entities, answering questions like, how do they make money? Where do they get their money from? Where do they get their startup financing from? How are they doing? These answers and others she published in her book, Social Entrepreneurship, A Practical Introduction. A final takeaway that I've gotten is ask for what you need. Rasheda was accepted into her PhD program, but the acceptance did not include funding. Her mother had taught her that this is the land of opportunity, so she reached out to her department chair, and after advocating for herself, the university found the money for her to be able to attend. Rasheda had a belief in herself and that she was worth investing in. Are you enjoying this podcast? Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss next week's episode. And if you're enjoying the show, a rating and a review will help other women like you to find it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.TrueAbundanceAdvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.